This video is going to be over whether or not we can eat meats that have been sacrificed to devils. And this may not be something that we actually have to deal with right now in the United States, but if it is, of course let me know. I'm basically just bringing out this lesson to show clear examples on contradictions between the Old and New Testaments. Now, the question of whether or not we should eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols has impacted some of us nowadays as we're trying to wake up and trying to observe the commandments of the Most High as He's written in the Scriptures. And this topic, it appears throughout the New Testament as well as in the Old and even in the Apocrypha. But what you'll find out today is that not only does the New Testament go against the Old Testament and Apocrypha in the subject matter, but it also contradicts itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the New Testament and we're going to go into 3 passages and we're going to look at this. We're going to start from Revelations chapter 2. We're going to go to verse 18. Revelations 2 and verse 18. Revelations 2:18. It says, "And unto the angel of the church in Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. I know thy works in charity, and service, and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee." So the things that he has against the church are going to be obviously negative things. "Because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which called herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication." So that's something negative. "And to eat things sacrificed unto idols." That's also something negative. So what this passage basically does is it puts eating things sacrificed to idols in a negative connotation. It's telling you clearly that you cannot do this and that you should not do this. But let's go to 1 Corinthians and let's see what that has to say. Let's go to 1 Corinthians and let's see what Paul has to say on the subject matter. We're going to go to 1 Corinthians 8. We're going to go to verse 4. 1 Corinthians 8 and verse 4. It says, "As concerning therefore the eating of those things that are offered and sacrificed unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many, but to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him. Howbeit there is not in every man that knowledge. For some with conscience of the idol unto this hour eat it as a thing offered unto an idol, and their conscience being weak is defiled. But meat commendeth us not to God, for neither if we eat are we the better, neither if we eat not are we the worse." So basically what this verse is telling you that you actually can eat things that are sacrificed unto idols. Okay, as long as you don't have a weak conscience. But let's keep reading. "But take heed," verse 9, "but take heed lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak." So it's talking about a liberty. Now, what is this liberty? This is actually the liberty of being able to eat things that are sacrificed to idols, okay? Because that's what it's been talking about. Let's keep reading. It says, "For if any man see thee, which hast knowledge to that meat in the idol's temple, shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are offered to idols? And through thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish, for whom Christ died? But when he sinned so against the brethren and wound their weak conscience, he sinned against Christ. Wherefore, if meat make my brother to offend, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend." So right here, it's letting you know that you can actually eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols, right? As long as you're not putting a stumbling block before your brother, or as long as you're not making your brother to offend. But you can do it, which actually goes against what Revelations was saying. But let's go into the last text that we're going to be looking at. We're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to go to verse 17. So just 2 chapters later, and let's see what this says. "For we being many are one bread and one body, for we are all partakers of that one bread. But Israel after the flesh are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? What say I then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifices to idols is anything? But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? So what these, especially verse 20 through 22 is saying is that you cannot eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols, because you cannot partake of the cup of devils as well as the cup of the Lord. So this actually goes against, basically what 1 Corinthians 8 was saying. But let's keep reading. Verse 23 says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Let a man seek his own, but every man another's well. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. So it's saying whatever is sold, eat. You ask, it could potentially be something that's been a meat that's been sacrificed to idols, but don't question it. Just eat it. So let's keep reading. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If any of them that believe not bid you to go to a feast, and ye be disposed to go. Whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. There it goes again. So you're basically going to a feast with unbelievers, because it's talking about people who believe not, right? You could be going to a feast with unbelievers who, could be Gentiles, and they could be having meat that's been sacrificed to idols, right? And giving it to you without you knowing. But you can go ahead and eat that meat, even though there's a possibility of you eating meat that's been sacrificed to idols. So that goes against what it was even saying in this own chapter, where you shouldn't eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols at all. Okay? Because if you're not supposed to be eating meat that's been sacrificed to idols at all, shouldn't you be asking, unbelievers what they did to the meat, before you eat it? But let's keep reading. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Conscience I say not of thy own, but of the other. Why is my liberty judge of another man's conscience? So there it goes with that liberty again. But basically in here, it's saying that if somebody tells you that they gave you some meat that's been sacrificed to idols, don't eat it. Not because of your conscience, because you can eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols, but for their conscience. Okay? So, even in, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, even within its own chapter, you can see, it's wavering on the topic. Just like it wavers throughout the New Testament. Like in Revelations, it's saying you should not eat things that have been sacrificed to idols. Then you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 8, it says, yeah, you can do this as long as you're not offending the brother or putting a stumbling block before your brother. And then we go to the 1 Corinthians chapter 10, it's kind of wavering on it. It says you can at first, then later on it says, you can be, it allows you basically to potentially eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols, right? So what we're going to do now is see what the Old Testament has to say about this topic. Let's go to Exodus chapter 34, verse 12. Exodus 34 and verse 12. It says, take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee. But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. For thou shalt worship no other God, for Yahuwah's name is jealous as a jealous Elohim. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go whoring after their gods, and do sacrifices to their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat it with sacrifice. So right here, the Most High is telling you that he's a jealous God. He doesn't want you serving any other God but him. So he doesn't want you doing sacrifices unto other gods. He doesn't want you to eat of the sacrifices of other gods. That's what this is clearly saying. So the Old Testament is actually telling you don't eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols. So let's look at another example of this. Let's go to Numbers chapter 25, verse 1. Numbers chapter 25 and verse 1. Numbers 25 verse 1. It says, "And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods." So it's saying that Israel was committing whoredom. They were sinning before the Most High. And one of the things that they were doing was actually eating of the sacrifices of other gods. This is something that you should not do. The Most High obviously is telling you not to do this. Okay? This is actually contrary to his word. But now that we see what the Old Testament has to say about this, let's see what the Apocrypha stance on the subject matter is. Let's go to 2 Maccabees chapter 6. We're going to start off in verse 1. 2 Maccabees chapter 6. We're going to start off in verse 1. It says, "Now long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers, and not to live after the laws of God." And let's skip down to verse 7. "And in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus, carrying ivy." So it says that the Israelites, they were actually brought in by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. So they didn't want to do it. So why didn't they want to do it? It's because they knew that this was actually a sin in the eyes of the Most High. He doesn't want you worshiping or serving any other gods. This is something that you should not do. And the spirit that we see in this right here, in this verse right here, is actually contrary to the spirit of the New Testament, where it says that you can actually eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols in some instances. So as you can see, the New Testament actually wavers on the question of whether or not you should eat meats that have been sacrificed to idols. And basically what it's saying goes against the spirit of the Most High and the Israelites. Because, the Old Testament and the Apocrypha clearly say not to eat it. And this is actually for a good reason. It's because you'll be sinning before the Most High. And remember, sinning is what actually led to our forefathers going into captivity repetitively throughout history. So you can obviously see some penmanship by the Gentiles in the New Testament. And this is another example of why you need to line up everything in the New Testament with the Old Testament to see if it's the truth. Shalom.